Okay, in this video I'm going to go over what I consider different pathways in Flintknapping. I'm not sure what I'm going to call the video, and I'm sorry if I'm doing too many of these theoretical things, but I'm doing this for two reasons. One, to organize my thoughts, and two, to have a basis for expanding in different areas, and I can review my videos and see where I need to fix things or restate things or whatever. So let me just start here. There's in my view, Flintknapping can go in a couple ways, and most people will recognize that there's modern, and then there's the replicating. Okay, I've made mistakes in writing here. Sorry. So there's basically two camps of Flintknapping, and this one here seeks to use authentic tools, etc. And this one here will just use anything. And there's a couple of ways you can go with this too. You can just make art, or you can also replicate using anything you can get your hands on to try to replicate, but it's actually not replicating, it's duplicating. Let's make that distinction, because you can use modern tools to create arrowheads and such that look real. Okay, so you're duplicating. It's different than trying to create something that looks real using authentic tools. There's two different schools of thought there. Alright, so where I'm going with my Flintknapping is I'm going to go in these two directions. But since I'm going to be Flintknapping for the next 20 years or so, I've got plenty of time to choose. If I want to do this, if I want to do replicating, let's say I've got a lot of time for that, so I don't need to focus on this right now. A lot of people have asked me to try to replicate certain things, certain tools, and arrowhead styles and so forth. I am going to get into that, but I've got plenty of time, and even if I do start now and accelerate the progress, I still can't catch up with people who have already been doing it for 20 plus years. Okay, so I'm not going to focus a lot of time on this here right now. What I'm doing mainly with my Flintknapping, and what I've been doing, I guess it's 5 years now, is the modern thing, and I'm using indirect percussion mainly. Okay, and I want to master this one first. I mean, that's what I want to do. I want to master indirect percussion with modern tools before I do anything else. I feel it's important that I master that, so that I don't so I don't mix myself up. I want to make sure that I know how to recognize the flakes that I create and the points that I create using this method. Because right now, I use indirect percussion to make stuff like this, but if I were to tell you exactly how I did it, or what tools exactly that I use. I just made this recently, and I still can't tell you exactly what size of flaker I used, or if I changed the sizes here, or if I used maybe some bone or antler to sharpen the tip, or or what the stage, or what stage this was in before I started. Like, it was a flake, a chunk, and it's almost impossible to tell what the original object was, if it was a flake or a nodule or a chunk. But the point is, in order for me to describe exactly how this is made, I've got to start from the very beginning. So until I can recognize how I do this in my own style, there's no way I'm going to be able to recognize how other things are done in other styles. So I'm focusing on mastering this. Alright, so eventually I'll be able to tell, or maybe I will, maybe I won't, what size of tools, what hardness of copper, the difference between using direct pressure and passive pressure, or the difference between direct percussion, indirect percussion, using copper. Right now I cannot tell with any reliability how I did this with copper. Even though I made this point, I cannot tell you exactly what tools I used, unless I film it on video or I have a perfect memory. I cannot tell you how I did this. Even though I made this, I cannot tell you how I did this. Not yet anyway. And maybe I won't get to that point ever, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try to master my method enough so that I can reliably know how I made this, regardless of when I made it. Okay, so that's that. And I might not even reach that goal. I might realize that I really cannot tell, even though I made it, unless I remember how I did it, exactly what tools I used. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. Because eventually I'm going to, try and figure out how some of these artifacts were made, or try to figure out methods that match artifacts. And I'm not going to be doing the analysis. Let's say I have an artifact, an already made artifact. I'm not going to analyze the artifact itself. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm sorry about the wind noise, it's starting to pick up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of an artifact, and I'm going to sit down with the artifact, and on video I'm going to make a copy with tools that I think were used in the past. Okay, and from this copy I'm going to compare all the flake scars and everything to this artifact. And if this copy doesn't match, I'm going to make another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, until eventually I'm going to come up with a good match to this. And this is how I'm going to proceed. I'm not going to, make a bunch of different things at random, using a tool set, one tool set to make a bunch of different things, and then come out at the end and say to myself, okay, now I know how everything is made. Because I don't think that's possible. I don't think I can just use one tool set, make a bunch of different styles, and get good at a bunch of different styles, and then say to myself after 20 years, I know how everything was made. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and, with the time that I have left to Flintknap, I'm going to, for this particular type of study, I'm going to make copies of artifacts until I can come up with one that matches really well, and then I'll say to myself, I think this is one way to do it. Okay, it's one way to do it. And if I have time, I'll try maybe 2 ways. And since there are hundreds of point styles, excuse me, there's probably like 600 plus point styles in the US. it's going to take a long time to try one or two ways to do the Flintknapping on all of these points. Okay, so that's this area. This is where I'm heading on this. Now the only thing that bothers me about this side over here is the ethical considerations, because if I make copies of artifacts and I come up with one that looks just like it using authentic tools, what I'm doing is I'm actually teaching people how to make counterfeits. I don't know how to spell that. Or I'm basically teaching people how to make fakes. Now there's an ethical consideration there, so if I do this, it's all going to be on film. Okay, I will never make one of these off camera that are trying to duplicate an original artifact with authentic tools and authentic materials. I'm never going to do this off camera. Okay, it'll always be on film. I mean, I can try to experiment, but I won't be doing a copy. You know, I might just take part of this artifact and not leave out the notch and just maybe try to imitate the flaking on the blade, okay, and that sort of thing. But if I just focus on imitating the flaking on the blade, I'm not going to say to myself, well, now I know how to make the whole thing, because it's not true. I just know how to make the flaking on the blade. Okay, so I'll leave this there, and I might expand on this later. I don't want to spend too much time here. Over on this side, this is my favorite part right here. I like creating art in stone with Flintknapping. This is my favorite. I mean, I like looking at the authentic artifacts, but I really like the relaxing effect of Flintknapping. Well, most of the time. If it's really frustrating material, it's not that fun, but just doing free forms and you know, letting the stone tell you what is best for it. You know, if it leads you in a certain direction, if it breaks or whatever, you just go with the flow. That's my favorite way to do it. Just go with the flow, right? Alright, so that's what I'll be doing a lot in my videos. And I might try to duplicate a point style using modern tools. Because if you do it this way, it usually doesn't look exactly like an artifact. So you're not crossing the line with ethical considerations, okay? Because your copy is not going to be on this side. It's not going to be equal to that, because, you know, with modern tools and modern materials, there are differences in flaking, and there's residue left over from metal and all that kind of stuff on the workpiece, and, you know, stuff like that. So the copies are not perfect. They can be very close, but they're not perfect. So I'll do some of these, and let's see. So I'm going to be staying on this side for a while. I'll skip around. I'll skip back and forth, because I'm going to, in an upcoming video, I'm going to be looking at some points from the Grasshopper Pueblo. That's the first one I'm going to be looking at, and you guys can look this up ahead of time. There's a lot of information on the internet on Grasshopper Pueblo, and I think it's room 246 that has a lot of preserved artifacts. Okay, and this is pretty common on the internet, so I'm going to be doing a video on this very shortly. But for most of my videos coming up are going to be on this side here, and they're going to be focused on two things. One is hunting points, and the other are art points. And most of these are going to be in glass, tile, and easily obtainable materials. Okay, and over here on hunting points, this is going to be various, mainly for people that I'm making points for, or just to show you guys how to make points. I'll be using various materials and various tools. So those are my two focus paths, I guess, for upcoming videos. And there's also challenging material. That's pretty popular too. A lot of people want me to do, difficult and challenging material. So this is where I'm going to stay. I guess I'm going to, if I had to put a percentage on it, 80% here and maybe 20% over here. And then eventually, over time, I'm going to do 20% of this and 80% of this. Because a lot of people want to see this side, because they're doing a lot of research. It's actually this whole topic of artifacts is fascinating for many people, and it is for me too. I love doing research on this. So eventually this is where I'm heading, but for now it's going to be mainly this, with maybe 20% or less on the actual artifacts. But it's going to change, like I said, over time, so that hopefully after everything is said and done, we can have a better understanding of flint knapping in general. So I think it's important to explore both sides. All right, because there are cultural influences, there are modern cultural influences that have parallels in ancient cultures. Okay, and it's important to understand these first before we go on to trying to understand the ancient cultures. One of the modern culture, just as an example, one of the things that influences flint knapping in modern culture is professional, let's say, professional grade work. Okay, this is one example of modern culture influence on flint knapping, is to produce professional grade work, where you produce a piece of art or a piece of work that is worthy for sale. Okay, now, and then let's say there's some just for hobby and hunting on this side. You're not really selling these, but you are selling these on that side. Modern culture will influence the way these look over here that are sellable, just as an example. So and some people, I don't want to get sidetracked here, and I don't want to make this too long, but some people will use this kind of idea to produce ancient point types. That look perfect. Okay, they have this mentality that they need to produce professional grade work in order to show it, or to show that they are knowledgeable or professional. Okay, for selling, and for other reasons, maybe not for sale, but for personal enjoyment or personal satisfaction. But then they carry this over into producing ancient point types that look perfect. Okay, and it blurs what actually was created in the past. So hopefully I won't get into this mentality, and the only way to avoid this is to actually identify it and know what it is. As an example, there are other examples of this type of different modern culture biases. This is just one. But if we recognize them first, then we can avoid them when we're over on this side. Okay? Because this can't be over on this side. Alright? Although there are very beautiful and well-made ancient points, the vast majority were not. Okay? Alright, so that's that. I'll get off my soapbox on that. And hopefully that wasn't too scatterbrained. I know some of my other videos I jump all over the place, and I'll have to redo them, I guess, eventually. But hope that wasn't too bad. Alright, that's it.